Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here. So as you can see on Twitter here, Steve Bunce is responding to a story by BBC Sport. Now, the story basically showed that millions of people live streamed Anthony Joshua versus Andy Ruiz Jr. They live streamed it for free. They basically illegally watched the fight. And this is Steve Bunce's take on the matter. What if a fighter dies in a pay-per-view fight? Well done to the millions who robbed boxers of the money they risk their lives for. The dead boxer's family will suffer. Please think. I mean, this goes to show how out of touch Steve Bunce is with the regular working class British boxing fan. The guy is completely out of touch. Boxing in the UK primarily is a working class sport. It's got working class roots. I mean, boxing gyms, they are in working class areas, in the inner city. They are integral to a lot of communities. And these gyms do a lot of work for their communities. Boxing is a working class sport. Most of the participants are from working class backgrounds, and a lot of there's a core audience of working class fans. It's always appealed to working class people. And unfortunately, a lot of these people can't afford to watch every single fight on pay-per-view. They might not even be able to afford subscribing to BT Sports or Sky Sports because the prices are extremely high. Not everybody has disposable income. Not everybody has that luxury. And to cast these people aside as thieves and criminals, quite frankly, it just goes to show how out of touch this clown really is. How about, let's talk about what's going on in British boxing right now. Right now we are going through a boom, right? We're going through a boom. A lot of people are interested in the sport of boxing through all walks of life. A lot of people are interested, and the boxing promoters know this, and as a result, they are putting any half-decent fight on pay-per-view, and in some cases, they are putting piss-poor fights on pay-per-view. Look at Tyson Fury versus Tom Schwarz. Look at the odds for that fight. It's a mismatch. Absolute mismatch. A joke. And that's on a pay-per-view? What do you expect people to do? It's a joke. Look at the undercard for that fight. Terrible. That's not value for money. Are you telling me that's worth 20 quid? Come on now. Maybe if you've got loads of disposable income, you'll buy it and you won't think anything of it. But a lot of people are not in that position. Let's say you've got a Tyson Fury fan, a guy who just about gets by. He's not got that much disposable income. What's he going to do? Is he going to pay 20 quid for that fight? Doubt it. He's going to live stream it. The question is, why is that type of fight behind a paywall? Why is that type of fight behind a paywall? Doesn't do anything for the sport, doesn't grow the sport, doesn't get the sport out there. It just appears that you're milking the bubble that's going on right now. The increase in popularity in boxing. You're milking it for as long as you can, and you're trying to get your pound notes in before the crash happens, before that bubble pops. That's what it looks like to me. So, for these clowns to say people who stream are robbing fighters of their money, etc., I mean, it doesn't wash with me. How about you save pay-per-view worthy fights for pay-per-view and put everything else on regular TV or regular BT or Sky? I mean, there's no way Tyson Fury versus Tom Schwarz should be on pay-per-view. I mean, look at Josh Warrington versus Kid Galahad. I praised BT and Frank Warren for that not to be on pay-per-view. When in reality, that type of fight should not be on pay-per-view. I shouldn't be praising promoters for not putting every single half-decent fight on pay-per-view, but that's the way it's got in the UK. That's the way it's getting. Boxing is becoming unaffordable for a lot of people over here. And these promoters really are taking the piss. They're milking this increased popularity in boxing for as long as they can. They're getting their money in, they're getting their pounds in, but when the crash happens, these guys are going to be they're going to be rich, man. They're going to be laughing We're still going to be here supporting the sport. So don't let these people make you feel bad for streaming and not buying every single fight. A lot of us will buy fights if we think they're worth money. I purchased Errol Spence versus Kell Brook. I purchased Alexander Usyk versus Murat Gassiev. I bought these fights because I supported the product. I was happy with it. But I'm not buying Tyson Fury versus Tom Schwarz. If I do watch that fight live, I will live stream it. I'm sorry. That's just what it is. It's not worth the money. It's not worth the money. How about people talk about these promoters milking the fans for every penny they're worth? You know, how about talk about the affordability of boxing and millions of people being, well, thousands of people being priced out watching the sport? Why don't you talk about that? That's not good for the sport's longevity. You know, Steve Bunce is out of touch. The guy's an absolute clown. And another example, look at Dillian Whyte. His last 2 fights have been on pay-per-view, right? And Oscar Rivas is also on pay-per-view. None of these fights are world title fights. This guy has been on 4 pay-per-views, headlining. He also fought Anthony Joshua on pay-per-view. And he's never been involved in a world title fight. He's headlined 4 pay-per-views. I mean, to me, it's not good enough, man. I mean, eventually this bubble's going to burst, and we'll still be here. We'll continue to support the sport, but these guys who are guilt tripping you into buying every single fight, you know, these guys are going to be long gone. They're going to be laughing. And look at some of these responses. Yeah, basically pointing out that this guy's out of touch. Yeah, boxing number 1. How out of touch with normal boxing fans do you want to be? If a fight is worth being on pay-per-view, then boxing fans will buy it. The problem is that 90% of the pay-per-views on at the moment aren't worth being on pay-per-view, so fans stream them, give quality content, and fans will pay. Don't, and fans will stream. Exactly. Dude McSnabs, he goes on to say, 100%, nearly every single fight has turned into a pay-per-view when it used to be only the top fighters. Now every Tom, Dick and Dave is a pay-per-view fight. Ripping the whole out of it and taking the piss out of fans. Totally agree. And yeah, again, Pendejo, he says, have you ever thought that people may use these sites because they can't afford pay-per-view? Exactly. You know, not everybody can afford buying all of these pay-per-views, especially when they are substandard. A lot of people can't justify it. Steve Bunce, again, there he is down there being an absolute clown. Hawkeye Wolf, yeah, it's a very good point, but the cost of these fights when people, it's a very good point, but the cost of these fights when people are already paying subscriptions is disgraceful. Totally agree. And look at this response from Steve Bunce. This sums up the arrogance of the man, and this sums up how out of touch he is. The argument is 25 years too late. Sorry. I'm sorry. You're an absolute clown. Screw Steve Bunce, man. He's out of touch, and you know he's got no idea what it's like to follow the sport as a working class fan. You know, not everybody is going to buy every single fight. I'm sorry, it's not going to work that way. You know, back in the day, it just used to be fights that were worth pay-per-view, but now every single half-decent fight is on pay-per-view. As fans, we shouldn't have to point out when a promoter does the right thing by putting a fight on regular TV, like Warrington versus Galahad, sorry. That fight is a good fight. I'm really looking forward to it, but it's not a pay-per-view fight, and I shouldn't praise a broadcaster for doing the right thing. But that's how it's got now in the UK. And people like Steve Bunce honestly make me sick. They make me sick. But this type of attitude isn't... It's not going to make this trend in the UK or this bubble in the UK be sustainable. It's not. You know, these promoters, they're just milking it for as long as they can. They're milking this trend for as long as it lasts. And when it bursts, like I said, they're going to have made their money. And we will still be here following the sport. So don't let these clowns guilt trip you. Steve Bunce, completely out of touch. Completely out of touch. he should really be exposing why certain fights are behind paywalls, and if they represent value for money. You know, how about Steve Bunce talks about the fact Frank Warren lied about Box Nation? You know, you sold us that dream, and that got sold down the river. You absolute clown. So, I mean, I'm sorry, man. The guy's an absolute joke. And yeah, share your thoughts below. Maybe I've gone over the top, but yeah, I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts. Peace.